The weight of invisibility is heavier than chains. Imagine moving through the world unseen, like your existence is background noise in a grand performance you never got invited to. That was Amani's life. Every day she entered the towering, glass building with its marble floors polished to a mirror's shine, where executives clicked past her in $1,000 shoes, their conversations filled with deals that could change lives. Yet none of them ever saw her. To them, she was only the woman pushing the cart, her rubber gloves leaving faint streaks of lemon-scented water across the already spotless surfaces. She lived in silence, her presence acknowledged only by the hum of the vacuum and the distant laughter of people who would never know her name. That silence became a prison, but one she had learned to endure, until the moment when a small cream-colored envelope tore through her world like a blade, reminding her that even the invisible could be dragged into the cruel spotlight. Her shift had begun like every other. The lobby of the corporate tower buzzed with an energy that belonged to the elite, men with watches so heavy they could buy a family's freedom, women whose perfume lingered like ownership. The chandeliers above cast golden light that seemed to worship wealth itself. Amani moved carefully along the edges, her cart rattling softly, her head lowered but her back unbroken. 42 years had sculpted her hands into maps of labor, the skin rough, nails chipped, every scar a silent testimony of sacrifice. She knew this place better than anyone, each smudge, each whisper that echoed between its walls. Because when you are invisible, you hear everything. But there was one person who never let her forget her place. Vanessa Miles. She was the kind of woman who could stop a room with a tilt of her chin, the wife of the building's powerful CEO. Stunning, draped in designer silk, her beauty sharpened by cruelty. Vanessa's smile wasn't warmth. It was a knife dressed in gloss. Her stilettos rang across the marble like a drumbeat of authority. "Careful where you scrub, Amani," she had once sneered, her laugh as sharp as broken glass. "This floor cost more than your entire life." Amani had swallowed the insult like she always did. Pride didn't pay bills and survival rarely cared about dignity, but today something about Vanessa's gaze was different. Colder, crueler. From across the lobby, Vanessa approached, her entourage trailing behind her, their giggles rehearsed, their mockery ready to be unleashed. In her manicured hand, she carried a small cream-colored box, elegant and ominous all at once. The sound of her heels echoed louder than usual, and every click brought Amani closer to a moment that would twist her fate. "Well, well, look who it is," Vanessa announced, folding her arms. The smile she wore was venom dressed in perfection. Her friends exchanged glances, stifling laughter. Amani kept her head bowed, gripping the rag in her hand until her knuckles burned white. She knew this pattern. Whenever Vanessa walked in with that tone, humiliation followed. "Haven't seen you much lately," Vanessa said sweetly, though the sweetness dripped with poison. "Been hiding from me?" She tapped her nails against the thick envelope she now held, each click a warning shot. "Well, today I've got something for you. A little surprise." She held out the envelope with theatrical flourish. The cardstock was thick, expensive, sealed with gold foil. The kind of paper Amani's world never touched. "It's an invitation," Vanessa said, her eyes glittering with cruel delight. "Brandon and I are getting married this Saturday at the Grand Magnolia Estate. And guess what? You're invited." Her friends exploded in quiet giggles, one covering her mouth, another coughing to mask a snort. "Not everyone gets an invite to something like this, right, girls?" Vanessa added, smirking. Amani froze. Her eyes flicked to the envelope, then to Vanessa's face. She saw it there, clear, undeniable. This wasn't kindness. This was cruelty wrapped in cursive letters and golden seals. This was a trap. "Oh, and wear whatever you like," Vanessa added, her voice dripping false sweetness. She gestured at Amani's uniform. "Just try not to show up in that. Wouldn't want the staff confusing you for one of them." Laughter erupted again. One of the girls leaned in with a smirk. "Maybe she can help clean up after the reception." The laughter grew, echoing in the marble chamber like applause at a cruel theater. Amani's chest tightened, Her face burned, but she didn't flinch. She didn't break. With her gaze locked downward, she whispered two words that no one expected. "Thank you." The laughter faltered. Vanessa blinked, caught off guard, her smirk stiffening. "Oh, thank you, ladies, how sweet," she mocked. But the rhythm was broken. Something about Amani's calm unsettled her. Clutching the envelope as though it were made of glass, Amani turned away. The weight of it pressed against her chest like a secret too heavy to carry. But with each step, something stirred deep, inside. Not sadness, not humiliation. Something sharper, stronger. By the time she reached her small apartment that evening, the envelope still burned in her hands. The climb up 3 flights of broken stairs felt endless. The lock clicked, the door opened, and the scent of vanilla candles and stale coffee welcomed her back to solitude. She sat on her worn bed and finally allowed the tears to fall. Years of invisibility, insult, and exhaustion spilling out at once. The invitation lay before her, its gold lettering gleaming mockingly in the dim light. Her mind was a storm. If she went, she would be their joke, the centerpiece of their cruel entertainment. If she didn't, it was surrender, acceptance that she was beneath them. Her gaze drifted to a crooked photo frame on the wall. Her mother, smiling proudly in a simple dress, looked back at her. She remembered the words her mother had once whispered. "Dignity isn't something they give you. It's something you carry when no one else believes in you." Something shifted. A memory long buried surged forward, a past she had sealed away. Because Amani hadn't always been invisible. She hadn't always been a janitor. Her trembling hands reached under the bed and pulled out a small wooden box. She opened it, and inside lay fragments of a life she no longer dared to claim. Photographs of a radiant young woman in elegant gowns, standing beside community leaders, smiling with confidence. Certificates, programs, articles, proof of her existence before the fall. At the very bottom, a certificate. Imani Adabio, founder and director, the Adabio Foundation. Her throat tightened as she traced her signature. That was her. Once. Before betrayal, bankruptcy, loss. Before everything crumbled. At the very bottom of the box, she found a letter. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it, reading the familiar handwriting. "If you ever need me, call. No matter when, I'll show up." Signed, Helena. Her phone sat inches away. Her thumb hovered, heart racing, breath unsteady. And then she pressed call. The line rang. Once, twice. Then, "Hello?" A familiar voice, shocked, almost breathless. "Imani? My God, is that really you?" Her lips quivered, eyes wet. "It's me, Helena. I need you, and I think it's time." Her voice broke, but her meaning was clear. It's time the world remembered who I really am. Sometimes life breaks you so completely that you start believing the broken pieces are all that remain. But then, in a single moment, one voice can remind you that the pieces still fit, that you were always whole. For Amani, that voice came, through the phone, trembling with disbelief but steady with love. "My God, is that really you?" Helena had said, and it was like the past rushing back in a flood. Years of silence melted into one fragile word. Help. That word was not surrender. It was a spark. And in that moment, Amani realized she wasn't just calling an old friend. She was calling herself back to life. The next morning, the low hum of the city was broken by the purr of a black SUV pulling up to the cracked curb outside Amani's apartment building. The car gleamed like it didn't belong on this side of town, windows tinted, chrome flashing. Then the door opened and Helena stepped out. Even the air seemed to bend around her. Oversized sunglasses hid her eyes, but her smile, sharp and dazzling, was unmistakable. Her suit was tailored within an inch of perfection, heels striking the pavement with authority. She spotted Amani at the entrance, standing uncertainly in her plain uniform, and for a moment, Helena froze. Then her lips parted into a grin so wide it erased years of absence. "Oh my God," she breathed, rushing forward. Her arms wrapped around Amani in a hug so tight it felt like stitching a wound shut. "It's really you. After all this time," Amani's voice cracked as she whispered, "I didn't know who else to call. I need help. I think I'm ready to stop hiding." Helena pulled back, holding her face between her palms, her voice firm but tender. "No, you didn't call for help. You called for a reminder, and that's what I'm here to give you, to remind you who the hell you are." Inside the apartment, the past spread across the coffee table like an exhibit in a forgotten museum. Old photos, certificates, clippings, evidence of a life of purpose and power. Helena's sharp eyes scanned each piece with reverence. She picked up the certificate, tracing the bold letters with her manicured finger. "Founder and director," she read softly. "You built something people still whisper about, Amani. And they think you're just a janitor now?" Her gaze snapped up. No, I won't let that be the story." Amani exhaled, her voice low. "They invited me to laugh at me, to humiliate me." She glanced at the envelope still sitting on the edge of the table. "But maybe I don't have to let them write the ending." Helena smirked, tossing her sunglasses onto the table with a decisive click. "Exactly. So tell me, how do you want them to see you when you walk in?" Amani hesitated, eyes darting to the floor. Her throat tightened before the words finally came out. "I want them to see the woman they tried to erase and failed." The corner of Helena's mouth curled upward. She grabbed her sketchbook and began scribbling furiously. Lines, curves, silhouettes, a warrior's armor disguised as a gown. Structured shoulders, clean lines, regal silhouette. Not flashy, powerful, not loud, unshakable. She lifted her gaze, her eyes blazing. "When you walk in, you won't just look like you belong. You'll look like the room belongs to you." Tears stung Amani's eyes, but she shook her head. "Helena, I don't have the money. Don't insult me." Helena cut her off, her tone slicing through the air. "This isn't about money. It's about legacy. You are not a charity case. You are a queen who forgot where she put her crown, and I am here to put it back on your head." They worked through the day. Helena pulled swatches of fabric from her designer case, rich textures in deep blacks and shimmering golds. Jewelry glinted on the table, each piece carefully chosen from Helena's private vault. "Not too much," she murmured. "One statement necklace. Simple but unforgettable." Makeup artists were called, hairstylists scheduled, fittings arranged. The tiny apartment became a war room of transformation. Each decision was a brick in rebuilding Amani's fortress. Hours passed like minutes until finally Helena leaned back, satisfied. "When you step through those doors, no one will remember the janitor. They'll remember the Adabio name, and they'll bow." Amani stared at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror that night. Her reflection looked the same, tired, worn, uncertain. But something had shifted beneath the surface. For the first time in years, she didn't see invisibility. She saw possibility. The day of the wedding dawned bright and mercilessly beautiful, the kind of day that felt like it was made for people who thought the world existed just to honor them. At the Grand Magnolia Estate, cars lined the sweeping driveway. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Teslas gleaming beneath chandeliers strung between trees. Guests floated across manicured lawns in gowns worth more than entire apartments, champagne glasses clinking as laughter swirled in the air. At the center of it all, Vanessa shone in her designer gown, tiara glittering in the sunlight. She posed for cameras, soaking in the admiration, certain that today was hers alone. "Do you think she'll actually come?" one of her friends whispered, a sly grin curling her lips. Vanessa laughed, tossing her hair. "Please. That woman, she knows her place, she won't dare show up." But even as she spoke, a sleek black car glided past the gates. Slowly, the back door opened. The first thing to appear was the sharp heel of a stiletto, black satin 6 inches tall. Then the hem of a gown so fluid and commanding it seemed alive. Guests nearby turned, their chatter faltering, replaced by silence. One foot emerged, then another. A figure rose from the car with a grace that stole the air. The gown clung in all the right places, the fabric a river of black silk threaded with gold, shimmering in the fading light. Shoulders strong, posture unshaken, hair braided high into a crown. Her earrings glinted long and sharp, and around her neck hung a necklace, silver chain, single black stone at its center glowing with quiet defiance. The woman lifted her chin, eyes burning with clarity. It was Imani. The courtyard stilled. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. Conversations choked to silence. Even the photographer lowered his camera, struck dumb. Vanessa, halfway through a pose, froze. Her smile faltered, her grip on the bouquet trembling. She turned, her gaze locking on the figure gliding toward the heart of her stage. Her lips parted, her throat dry. "No," she whispered, panic prickling her skin. "This isn't possible." But it was. And as Imani's heels struck the marble with the rhythm of a queen, returning to her throne, every eye turned. Whispers rippled like fire through the crowd. Who is she? She must be someone important. Is that? And then, one voice rose above the rest. An older gentleman near the front, his eyes wide with recognition, whispered words that made Vanessa's knees buckle. "Wait, isn't that Imani Adabio?" The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Imani Adabio. For a heartbeat, the courtyard fell silent, so still that the distant chirp of a bird seemed deafening. Glasses hovered in mid-air, smiles froze, and whispers began to stir like an incoming storm. Faces turned, eyes widened, and the weight of recognition rolled across the garden like a tidal wave. The older man who had spoken stumbled forward, his voice trembling. Your father was a giant in this city. And your mother, my God, your mother's smile lit up every community meeting. We thought you were gone." Imani's chin lifted, her gaze steady though her chest thundered beneath the silk gown. She clasped the man's hand gently, grounding herself in his sincerity. "I am not gone," she said, her voice even, carrying without effort. "Life took me to places I never expected, but I am still here." A murmur swelled through the crowd. "Adabio Foundation," someone whispered. "I remember the scholarships." Another voice. "She's the one who built those programs downtown." Vanessa's tiara seemed suddenly too heavy, her bouquet damp with sweat from her trembling palms. Her carefully painted smile cracked as she tried to steady her breathing. "This is ridiculous," she hissed under her breath, darting frantic glances at her friends. "She's nobody. She's a janitor." But the words felt flimsy now, dissolving under the heat of truth. Brandon, standing stiffly beside her, had turned fully toward Imani. His phone, once a shield of distraction, now hung forgotten at his side. His brows furrowed as he studied her as if seeing her for the very first time. "Vanessa," he murmured, his tone sharp. "What is this?" she stammered, lips trembling. It was just a joke." "A joke?" Brandon's voice dropped into a low growl that cut through the murmurs around them. "You invited her here to humiliate her?" Imani stepped forward before Vanessa could sputter out a defense. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of power that silences chaos. "No, Brandon. She didn't invite me. She challenged me. And I accepted." All eyes swung back to her. She stood centered beneath the chandelier of stars, her black and gold gown shimmering like fire in the dusk. The necklace with its single black stone rested at her throat, gleaming like a talisman of survival. "I didn't come here for revenge," she said slowly, deliberately. "I didn't come here to ruin anyone's day. I came here to remind you all, remind myself, that dignity is not a price tag. It is not status. It is not something that can be stripped away by whispers." Her words rippled outward, cutting deeper than Vanessa's shallow taunts ever could. People who had been laughing moments ago now stood still, their cheeks flushed with shame. A young waiter shifted awkwardly at the edge of the courtyard, His tray trembling as he realized for the first time that guests were looking at him differently, really seeing him. Vanessa's face contorted, fury battling panic. "Don't listen to her," she shrieked suddenly, her voice cracking. "She's nothing. She cleans toilets, for God's sake. She doesn't belong here." But the venom in her words didn't land the way she expected. Instead of laughter, there was silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, then one clap, another and another, until the applause swelled, rolling through the courtyard like thunder. Guests rose to their feet, some with tears shimmering in their eyes. Amani closed her eyes for a moment, drinking in the sound. For years, she had been invisible. Now she was undeniable. Vanessa spun toward Brandon, desperate. "Stop this. Do something." But Brandon's gaze was fixed on Amani. "I had no idea," he said softly, his voice rough with something that sounded suspiciously like respect. "If I had known—" Amani lifted a hand, silencing him. "No. Don't apologize. I didn't come here for that." Her eyes swept the crowd, her voice steady. "I came here for me, to remember that I am more than what the world tried to make of me. And maybe—" her gaze lingered on the staff at the edges, the ignored, the unseen, "to remind all of you that the invisible are carrying stories you cannot even imagine." The crowd shifted, unsettled, awakened. Some looked guiltily toward the waiters, the janitors, the drivers. Others leaned forward, captivated by her strength. At the edge of the garden, Vanessa's hands shook so violently the bouquet slipped, crashing to the ground. Gasps followed the sound. She stared at the fallen flowers, her chest heaving. Her kingdom was crumbling, and no amount of diamonds could hold it together. "I won't let you steal this day from me," she spat, her voice raw with desperation. "This is my wedding, my moment. You can't just walk in here and—" But before she could finish, a businessman in the front row stepped forward. His hair was silver, his suit impeccable. His eyes glistened as he addressed Amani. "Your father once helped me keep my company alive when no one else would. He gave me a loan with nothing but a handshake. I never forgot. If you ever bring back the Adabio Foundation, I want to be the first to contribute." A woman followed, clutching her pearls. "Me too. Your family's work changed lives. We won't let that disappear." More voices rose, one after another, a tide of recognition, support, and reverence. Amani's chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. She tilted her face toward the night sky as though searching for her parents among the stars. "Maybe," she whispered, almost to herself. "Maybe it's time." Helena, standing near the back, folded her arms with a knowing smile. She didn't clap, didn't shout. She simply nodded, her gaze steady, her pride unshakable. Vanessa, trembling, took a step back. Her friends had melted into the crowd, no longer eager to be aligned with her. Her face was pale, her breath ragged. She stumbled, heels scraping against marble, searching desperately for a way to salvage her crown. But then Brandon turned to her, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. "You set this up," he said. "You thought humiliating her would make you shine brighter, but all you've done is expose your cruelty." His words landed like a slap. Vanessa staggered back, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Amani did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply turned, gathering the strength that years of silence had forged. "I don't need to ruin you, Vanessa," she said, her voice calm as still water. "You've already done that yourself." The crowd erupted again, but this time the applause was mixed with something sharper. Gasps, murmurs, phones raised. To record. The humiliation Vanessa had planned had twisted, folding back onto her like a blade she could not control. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked gulps. The walls were closing in, the cameras capturing her unraveling. She turned sharply, shoving past a guest, her bouquet abandoned, tiara tilting crookedly as she fled through the archway of flowers. All eyes remained fixed on Amani. She stood alone, powerful, radiant. But in the corner of her eye, she saw something no one else noticed: Brandon's expression. It wasn't just respect. It was curiosity. a spark of something that unsettled her. His gaze lingered too long, as if peeling back the layers of her soul. And in that gaze, Amani felt the warning. This wasn't over. Humiliation can be louder than applause. For Vanessa, the sound of clapping guests wasn't celebration. It was thunder crashing against her skull. Every cheer for Amani felt like a nail sealing her coffin, each phone lifted to record her collapse, like a dagger twisting deeper. She had built her life on appearances, on flawless perfection, on being untouchable. And in one night, one uninvited woman had stolen it all. The tiara sat crooked on her head as she stumbled into the estate's back hallway, chest heaving, eyes burning. Her hands clawed at the silk of her gown, tearing seams, smudging makeup, anything to escape the suffocating echo of that courtyard. Rage surged hotter than shame. No, she whispered to herself, slamming her fist against the wall. No, this isn't the end. I will not let her win. Back outside, the party struggled to reclaim its rhythm. Guests mingled nervously, laughter forced, conversations shallow. But the center of gravity had shifted. Eyes kept darting toward Amani, who stood poised beneath the lights. Helena at her side like a silent guardian. She had not asked for applause, and yet it kept coming in waves, admiration pouring from faces that once would have brushed past her without a glance. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. Brandon approached slowly, his hands shoved into his pockets, his gaze thoughtful. He wasn't a man used to being shaken, but tonight the foundation of his life felt unsteady. "Imani," he said, his tone softer now, almost careful. "I had no idea who you were. Why didn't anyone know?" Amani's eyes narrowed, her voice calm but edged. "Because people only see what they want to, and no one cared to ask." His jaw tightened. He glanced toward the archway where Vanessa had disappeared, then back at her. She never should have done this. What she did tonight was unforgivable. His words were sincere, but there was something else lingering beneath them. Curiosity, maybe even hunger. The look in his eyes unsettled her, like he was studying not just her words but the fire beneath them. Before she could respond, Helena stepped forward, interjecting with sharp precision. "Enough," she said firmly. "This isn't her moment to explain herself to you. This is her moment to reclaim what's hers." Brandon's lips pressed into a thin line. He nodded once, but his gaze lingered on Amani as he stepped back into the crowd. Later that night, the city blurred past the windows of Helena's SUV. Amani sat silently, staring at her reflection in the glass, the gown still hugging her frame, like armor. Her fingers brushed the black stone necklace resting against her collarbone. The stone had been her mother's, a gift passed down, always meant to remind her of strength. Tonight it had felt like carrying her mother's spirit with her. "Talk to me," Helena urged softly, her hands gripping the wheel. "What's going through your head?" Amani exhaled, her breath shaky. "For years, I believed I was finished, that the world had taken everything from me. But standing there tonight, it felt like my parents were watching, like they were telling me it's not too late." She paused, blinking back tears. "But Helena, what if I'm too broken to start?" Again, Helena's laugh was soft, almost bitter. "Broken? Amani, do you know what broken glass becomes under enough pressure? Diamonds. And tonight you shone like one." The word struck something deep in her chest. She leaned back, closing her eyes, whispering to herself, "Maybe it's time." But in another corner of the city, Vanessa sat in front of her vanity, makeup streaked, tiara tossed onto the floor like trash. Her reflection mocked her, swollen eyes and smeared lipstick staring back with cruel honesty. Her phone buzzed endlessly with notifications, videos already spreading, whispers already spiraling through social media. She had been exposed, reduced, from queen to fool in less than an hour. And yet, as she scrolled through comment after comment, her rage solidified into something colder, sharper, You think you humiliated me? She whispered, her voice trembling with fury. No, you've made yourself my enemy, and I don't lose. Her hand hovered over Brandon's contact, but she pulled back. Not yet. Not while the wound was raw. Instead, she opened another message thread, one marked with a single initial. She's back, she typed with shaking fingers. We need to deal with her. The reply came almost instantly. Understood. Meanwhile, Amani lay awake in her small apartment. The gown carefully hung across the chair, the necklace resting on her nightstand. The applause still echoed in her ears, but so did the whispers of doubt. Could she really resurrect what had been destroyed? Could she rebuild the foundation her parents had poured their lives into? Or would the world tear her down again, crueler this time because it knew where she was vulnerable? Sleep finally came in fragments, haunted by dreams of her father's voice urging her forward and Vanessa's venomous glare promising destruction. By dawn, the choice had carved itself into her chest, like scripture. She sat at the table with a cup of bitter coffee, staring at the faded letter from Helena she had found in the box. If you ever need me, call. She had called, and Helena had come. Now it was her turn to act. Helena, she said later that morning, her voice steadier than she felt. We're bringing it back. The foundation. My parents' work, everything they built. We're going to rebuild it. Helena's smile was slow, fierce. That's what I was waiting to hear. But as they mapped plans across the table, voices rose in excitement, papers scattered with scribbled notes and sketches of possibilities. Neither of them noticed the car parked across the street. The tinted window rolled down just slightly and a camera lens glinted in the sunlight. A photo snapped. Amani at the table, eyes alive again, papers spread before her like blueprints of resurrection. The lens retreated. The window rolled up. The car drove off silently, disappearing into the morning rush. Inside, Amani laughed at something Helena said, a sound she hadn't made in years. For the first time in so long, hope sat with her like an honored guest. She didn't know that far away Vanessa was already sharpening her knives, aligning her allies, and whispering her name like a curse. And somewhere in the shadows, the first strike was already being planned. The most dangerous enemy is not the one who shouts their hatred. It's the one who smiles while sharpening the knife behind their back. For Vanessa, humiliation wasn't an ending. It was ignition. The applause for Amani haunted her dreams, turning into jeers in the quiet of night. The image of that black and gold gown burned into her eyelids every time she closed them. But beneath the humiliation boiled something darker. Not despair, not surrender, hatred, pure, concentrated hatred. She swore she would not sleep until she saw Amani crawl back into the shadows where she belonged. And she knew exactly how to do it, because she had the one weapon that still lingered in the whispers of the city, Amani's fall. Late at night, Vanessa sat in her study, papers scattered across the desk, laptop open to articles nearly 2 decades old. Embezzlement scandal, the headlines read. Adabio Foundation funds missing, director accused. Though charges had never stuck, the stain had remained. The details were hazy now, buried under fresher news cycles, but Vanessa knew the human mind loved a recycled scandal. All she had to do was remind them, and if memory alone wasn't enough, she would feed it. Lies mixed with truth until the line between them disappeared. She picked up her phone and dialed. It's time, she said, her voice cold. I want everything on her, every skeleton, every rumor, every debt, and I want it fast. The voice on the other end chuckled softly. Consider it done. Across town, dawn spilled soft light across Amani's small kitchen table. Papers were strewn across it again, but these were different, blueprints of hope rather than ruin. Helena tapped a pen against the margin of a draft. Proposal. This is good. If we pitch this right, we can get sponsors within weeks. Amani rubbed her temples, overwhelmed but alive. I thought no one would remember. I thought it was all gone. Helena's eyes softened. People don't forget light, Amani. They might bury it, but they don't forget it. She reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. We're not just rebuilding a foundation, we're rebuilding you. The words struck deep. For the first time in years, Amani allowed herself to imagine it. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Never let them decide your worth, daughter. Stand so tall they have no choice but to look up. But hope is fragile, and in the shadows, Vanessa was already plotting how to shatter it. 2 days later, whispers began. At first, small, drifting like smoke. A blog post resurfacing old accusations. A social media thread questioning how a disgraced director could dare reappear. By the third day, the whispers had become chatter. Articles circulated. Anonymous comments called her a fraud. Helena stormed into the apartment, tablet in hand, face grim. Look at this. She shoved the screen across the table. The headline glared back. From philanthropist to fraud. The truth behind Amani Adabio's disappearance. Amani's chest tightened as she scrolled. Old photos of her at galas, smiling, juxtaposed with images of court documents, quotes ripped from context. The narrative was clear. She was guilty. She had vanished, and now she was crawling back. Her throat constricted. It's happening again, she whispered, her fingers trembling. They're going to bury me all over again. Helena slammed her hand against the table. No, they don't get to. Not this time. Last time you were alone. This time you have me. You have allies. But Amani's voice cracked. What if they're right? What if people believe it? What if everything I'm building falls apart? Again? Helena's eyes blazed. Then we fight harder. Truth beats lies, but only if you refuse to bow. Meanwhile, Vanessa watched the storm grow from the comfort of her penthouse. Her phone buzzed with updates, blogs, comments, whispers spreading like wildfire. She scrolled through gleefully, sipping wine. Yes, she whispered to herself, lips curling into a vicious smile. Crawl, Amani. Crawl back into the dirt. But Vanessa underestimated the resilience of someone who had already lost everything once. That evening, Amani sat with the wooden box again. The photos of her younger self mocked her, radiant, confident, untouchable. She lifted the black stone necklace, pressing it against her heart. Her mother's words whispered through memory. Dignity isn't given. It's carried. Tears blurred her vision, but beneath them burned something fiercer. She stood, walked to the cracked mirror, and forced herself to meet her reflection. The face staring back was tired, scarred, aged, but not defeated. No more running, she whispered to the glass. No more hiding. The next morning, she stood before a room of community leaders Helena had gathered, nervous, trembling at first, but when she spoke, her voice found strength. She told her story, not the rumors, not the twisted headlines, but the truth. How she had been betrayed, how funds were stolen in her name, how she had lost everything, how she had survived. At first, the room was skeptical, guarded. But as she spoke, eyes softened, heads nodded. By the end, applause broke the silence. Not thunderous, but steady, supportive, real. Hope flickered stronger. For every whisper of doubt Vanessa spread, a seed of trust was being planted face to face. But Vanessa wasn't finished. One evening, as Amani left a meeting, she felt it. A presence. Someone watching. The street was too quiet. The air too still. She clutched her coat tighter, heels clicking against the pavement. A shadow shifted near an alleyway. She turned, pulse quickening. Hello? She called, her voice shaky. No response, just silence. She hurried toward her apartment, her keys gripped like weapons. Behind her, a figure lingered just out of sight, watching, waiting. A camera clicked softly in the dark. When she reached her door, she spun around, but the street was empty. The next morning, Helena banged on her door, phone in hand, face pale. You need to see this. On the screen was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. Amani leaving the meeting, her expression weary. The caption beneath it read, "Can we really trust her? Or is history about to repeat itself?" Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just rumor now, this was surveillance. Someone was watching her. Fear has a way of crawling beneath your skin and staying there. Once you know you're being watched, every shadow feels alive. Every whisper feels pointed, and silence becomes unbearable. For Amani, the photo on that blog was more than an invasion of privacy. It was a declaration. Someone was following her. Someone was waiting for her to slip. The world that had just begun to open its arms again suddenly felt hostile, filled with unseen eyes. And in the quiet of her apartment, staring at the glow of Helena's phone, she wondered if this was the universe's cruel reminder that she was never meant to rise again. But then, almost angrily, another thought surged. No, they want me afraid. And I won't give them that satisfaction. Helena paced the apartment like a general planning a counterattack. This isn't just gossip anymore, she said, her heels clicking against the floor. This is organized. Vanessa doesn't just want to embarrass you, she wants to destroy you. She's digging. She's following. And whoever she hired knows what they're doing. Amani sat still, fingers curled around the necklace at her throat. The stone felt warm, steadying. Then let her dig, she whispered. She'll only find dirt. She buried herself. But even as she spoke bravely, unease coiled in her stomach. At night she heard footsteps in hallways that were supposed to be empty. Once she swore she saw a car parked across the street 2 nights in a row, engine off, windows tinted. When she blinked, it was gone. Meanwhile, Vanessa was relentless. She met with the man she'd contacted, a fixer whose name was whispered. In elite circles, someone who specialized in reputation management through destruction. In the smoky back room of a private club, she slid him a file. She embarrassed me in front of the entire city. I want her erased. Her name, her legacy, everything. The man flipped through the folder lazily, his expression unreadable. You want her credibility gone or her spirit broken? Vanessa's eyes glittered, cold and cruel. Both. Back in her modest apartment, Amani tried to keep moving forward. She and Helena began setting up meetings, sketching plans to relaunch the Adabio Foundation. We'll start small, Helena said, tapping at her laptop. Community outreach, scholarships, food programs. We remind people what your name stood for. Once the truth shines, Vanessa's lies will shrivel. But rebuilding was slow, fragile work, and Vanessa's poison spread faster than their seeds of hope. Another blog post surfaced, this time with anonymous witnesses claiming Amani had pocketed money. Comments beneath it were vicious. She's just a fraud in designer clothes. Once a thief, always a thief. One evening, as Amani walked home from a meeting, she felt it again, that prickle along her neck, that sense of being hunted. She tightened her scarf, quickened her pace. The street lamps buzzed overhead, casting long shadows. Behind her, a footstep echoed. She turned sharply. A man in a hoodie lingered, half hidden. Her voice trembled. Who are you? What do you want? No answer. Just silence. Then he lifted his phone, the faint glow of a camera lens flashing in. The dark. She bolted, her heels clattering against the pavement, heart pounding so violently she thought her ribs might break. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment door, slamming it shut, locking every bolt. Her chest heaved as she slid to the floor, tears blurring her vision. When Helena arrived minutes later, she found Amani shaking, clutching the necklace, like a lifeline. He was there, Amani gasped, watching me, recording me. Helena crouched beside her, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. This is exactly what Vanessa wants. To break you down, to make you crumble. But you are not alone this time. If she wants war, we'll give her war. For the first time, Helena's voice cracked, her usual confidence raw with emotion. You're my sister, Amani, and I'll burn this city down before I let her win. The next morning, Helena's network of contacts went to work. They traced IP addresses, dug into online forums, followed digital breadcrumbs, and slowly a picture formed. A small team leaking stories, feeding photos, pushing narratives. all connected back to Vanessa's fixer. Helena's jaw tightened. "We've got her," she whispered, but Vanessa was always one step ahead. That evening, Brandon called. His voice was measured but curious. "I've been seeing the articles, the posts. Is it true?" Amani's grip on the phone tightened. "If it were true, Brandon, do you think I'd be here? Do you think I'd still be standing?" His silence stretched too long, the kind of pause that revealed doubt. "I want to believe you," he said finally, "but this city has long memories." When she hung up, her chest felt hollow. Brandon's doubt was proof. The smear campaign was working. Helena slammed her fists against the table. "We can't play defense anymore. Tomorrow, we go public. A press conference. We tell your story ourselves. No filters, no lies. Just the truth." Amani hesitated, fear tugging at her. "What if they twist it? What if it makes things worse?" Helena's gaze burned. "Then at least they'll hear you. Not their version of you. You." That night, sleep evaded her. She sat by the window, watching the street below, every flicker of shadow a threat. The necklace rested against her palm, the black stone glinting faintly in the moonlight. She whispered, to it like a prayer, to her mother, to her father, to herself, "Give me strength. Just one more time." At dawn, Helena pulled up in the SUV, her expression grim but determined. Cameras were waiting downtown, reporters circling like vultures. As they drove, Amani's stomach churned, dread and resolve battling inside her. But, just as they turned the corner toward the venue, a deafening bang shattered the morning calm. Tires screeched. Glass exploded, the SUV jolted violently to the side. Helena screamed, gripping the wheel as the car spun. Papers, bags, shards of glass filled the air in a whirlwind. The SUV slammed to a stop against a lamppost, smoke hissing from the hood. Coughing, dazed, Amani blinked through the haze. Her ears rang, her hands shook. She reached for Helena, blood trickling from a cut on her brow, and through the cracked windshield in the blur of chaos she saw it. Another car idling across the street, headlights dim, engine humming. A shadowed figure in the driver's seat. Watching, waiting, then just as quickly, it sped away. There are moments when the world seems to pause, when breath itself is suspended, and you realize your life is standing on the edge of a blade. For Amani, that moment came in the wreckage of the SUV, glass glittering around her like fallen stars, smoke curling into the dawn. Her ears rang, her lungs burned, but she was alive. Beside her, Helena groaned, pressing a bloodied hand to her forehead, but her grip on Amani's arm was iron. "Don't you dare give them the satisfaction," she hissed through clenched teeth. Even broken, even bleeding, Helena was unyielding. And in that moment, Amani felt something surge through her. Not fear, not defeat, but resolve. Whoever had tried to silence her had just made a fatal mistake. Because now she had nothing left to lose, and that made her unstoppable. Paramedics swarmed, reporters circled like vultures, cameras flashing wildly as the wreckage became instant headlines. Philanthropist survivor of car crash. Questions flew, voices blurred. But through the chaos, one truth crystallized in Amani's mind. This wasn't an accident. This was a warning. And warnings only fueled her fire. By the following evening, she stood at a podium in a crowded community hall, bandages visible on her forehead, the black stone necklace gleaming against her collarbone. Helena, bruised but unbowed, stood beside her. The room buzzed with tension. Journalists pressed shoulder to shoulder, cameras ready. When Amani began speaking, her voice trembled for only a moment before it found steel. "They want you to believe I'm a fraud, that I ran from shame, that I don't belong here, but let me tell you the truth. Years ago, I was betrayed. Money was stolen in my name. I lost my foundation, my parents, my dignity. And yes, I became invisible. I scrubbed floors in silence because survival left me no choice. But invisibility is not the same as erasure. Tonight I stand before you not as the woman they tried to bury, but as the daughter of two people who taught me dignity cannot be taken. It can only be surrendered. and I am done surrendering." Her words fell into the crowd like sparks. Murmurs rose, cameras clicked, pens scribbled. Some faces hardened with skepticism, but others softened, moved. The tide was shifting, slow but undeniable. And then, from the back of the hall, a voice rang out, smooth, venomous. "Beautiful speech, Amani, almost convincing." The crowd parted. As Vanessa entered, her presence still radiant but her edges fraying. She was draped in designer silk, makeup flawless, but her eyes burned with bitterness. She sauntered forward, slow applause echoing. "You've always had a talent for performance." The hall stiffened. Cameras swiveled, catching every frame. Amani's gaze sharpened, but her voice remained calm. "You don't belong here, Vanessa. This isn't your stage." Vanessa's laugh was brittle. "Oh, but it is, because I know the truth and they deserve to hear it." She raised her phone, a file of documents glowing on the screen. "The missing money, the scandal, you can dress it up however you like, but the evidence speaks louder than your sob story." Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters leaned in, hungry. Helena stepped forward, fire blazing in her eyes. "Enough of your games." She whipped a folder onto the podium, papers spilling open. "We did our homework too. Bank records, testimonies, audits, and every thread leads back not to Amani, but to the man she once trusted, your father's associate. The thief was exposed years ago, but the narrative never corrected, because people like you thrive on keeping women like her silent." All eyes swung back to Vanessa. Her smile faltered. Amani seized the moment, her voice cutting through like a blade. "You wanted to break me with my past. But my past isn't shame, it's proof. Proof that I was strong enough to lose everything and still rise again. What do you have, Vanessa? A wedding ruined, a reputation built on cruelty, and a heart so empty you tried to fill it with my destruction." The silence that followed was electric. Then a reporter's voice broke it. "Mrs. Miles, care to comment on these documents?" Cameras flashed mercilessly, microphones shoved in Vanessa's direction. Her composure cracked. She stammered, eyes darting wildly, sweat glistening at her temple. This is fabricated. She's lying." But no one believed her. Not anymore. The crowd shifted, their attention swinging away from Vanessa and back to Amani. Applause began, not tentative this time, but fierce, sustained like thunder rolling through the hall. Strangers rose to their feet, some with tears glistening, others with fists clenched in solidarity. Vanessa's face crumpled. She spun, shoving past reporters, her designer heels clattering as she fled once again. Helena leaned in close, whispering with a smirk, "Twice in 1 week, she won't survive a third." But Amani wasn't gloating. She stood tall, eyes lifted toward the ceiling, the applause washing over her like baptism. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. This was about reclaiming what had been stolen. Not the money, not even the reputation, but the dignity. The unshakable knowledge that she was never what they said she was. Afterward, as the hall emptied and the reporters dispersed, a few community leaders approached. "If you relaunch the Adabio Foundation, we want in," one said firmly. "This city needs you." Amani smiled softly, her hand brushing the necklace at her throat. "Then let's build it together." That night, she and Helena sat at the kitchen table once more, papers spread like maps of the future. Helena grinned, exhaustion in her eyes but fire in her smile. "You realize what this means, right? This is just the beginning." Amani nodded, her gaze steady, voice quiet but resolute. "No more hiding, no more invisibility. From here on, we rise." But outside, in the darkened street, a car lingered. A familiar shadow sat behind the wheel, watching the light in Amani's window. Though Vanessa's schemes had crumbled, the fixer she had hired had not vanished. His orders were unfinished, his loyalty not to Vanessa's pride but to profit. And profit demanded results. The figure lit a cigarette, the ember glowing briefly before fading into shadow. He raised a phone to his ear. "She survived the crash," he said calmly. A pause, a faint smile. "But accidents can happen again." The car rolled away, tail lights vanishing into the night. Inside, unaware, Amani laughed for the first time in years, the sound rich, unguarded, healing. She didn't know the storm wasn't finished. But even if it came, she was ready, because this time she remembered exactly who she was.